push the go live button, so we'll turn down the volume a little bit here. And take your time, signing in. I'll give some instructions here first. Orange sheets, if you are a provider, if you're licensed, you need CEUs, particularly DCs, the orange sheets have to be completed. There's one document that needs to be brought with you and completed in its entirety. The other document, you just write your name and the number of hours that you're here. All right? Help yourself to the coffee and fruit in the back, sponsored by the Minnesota Chiropractic Association. I think we'll get started. Really good turnout here. So I don't do go live very often, so we'll see if this gets going on the first time. Good morning, everyone. This is Third Thursday, co-sponsored between the Human Performance Center and the Minnesota Chiropractic Association. This is a series of sports and performance lectures that we have every third Thursday of the month. So I welcome our Facebook livers, and I welcome this awesome turnout this morning. I think many of you know our presenter today, Tim Howie. He's a popular name in the hallways around here. He teaches our EMT class here at Northwestern Health Sciences. And the students that have had his EMT class, you can tell they're different. They're different students, and they come out of his class with a broader knowledge and a greater level of confidence in managing trauma and triaging on the sideline for the Human Performance Center. So I'm excited for today's topic, which is sudden cardiac arrest in athletics. And again, I welcome you. This is co-sponsored between the MCA and Northwestern Health Sciences University. And I think I'll allow Tim to introduce himself at this point. So welcome, Tim. Thank you.
So thanks for having me here. So like I said, my name's Tim Howie, and I'm a full-time faculty member at Inver Hills Community College, teaching the paramedic program over there. Basically, people ask me, what do you teach? And I say, yeah. So by nature, EMS is kind of the jack of all trades, master of none. We cover just about everything that there is out there, because when somebody calls 911, it can be for anything. So in addition to that, I'm still very active out on the streets. In my practice, working for North Memorial out of Brooklyn Center, so stay out on the trucks as a critical care paramedic. So coming into the presentation today, it's kind of nice to talk about something that's a very interesting topic for me, and something that is something that I'm quite passionate about, which is sudden cardiac arrest. So when we start talking about sudden cardiac arrest, we can talk about that in many different formats. And it is quite broad. It is one of the things that tends to end up killing people out there, as the name would imply. So today we have a particular focus, and we're going to talk about it in athletics. So most of the time that we deal with cardiac arrest, we're dealing with somebody that's usually of an older age, multiple morbidities, so different issues like that. So this is kind of an interesting topic to get into some different settings for this particular condition. So when we start taking a look at athletics in general, why is it that people are dying during athletic events? And if you take a look at the pie chart that's up here, you can see that accidents takes a full half of the pie. So 51% are due to accidents. When we talk about accidents, we're usually talking about bleeding. So oftentimes I'll say people don't die from sprained ankles, people don't die from stubbed toes, but once when you start having blood come out of them, people die from that. So that's where about a full half of the deaths come from. Now, if we go to the other side of the pie chart, there's some things on there that I thought was actually kind of interesting. I never knew that suicide was actually something they measured in athletic deaths, but apparently 9% come from that. Homicide, I thought, was kind of a large pie chunk of that too. But when we start taking a look at the topic of today, cardiac causes of death take 16% of it, and this is information from the American Heart Association. So they published this back in 2011. So it's the most updated information they have. So, like I said, when we talk about death in sports, trauma, number one, usually leading to death. By the way, anyone recognize this picture? So this was a hockey goalie where a skater was coming up to him, ended up falling down on the ice, skate come up, and managed to actually sever his jugular vein up inside of his neck. And then he was bleeding down onto the ice as a result of that. So absolutely, do we have bleeding causing death in sports? Absolutely we do. Not the topic of today, but just because we're going to cover athletic deaths, I just wanted to say just a couple of things about it. First of all, when it comes down to bleeding, how quickly do you want to stop it? Yep, 5 minutes ago was a very good time to make it stop. How do we feel about tourniquets?
Probably not.
I'm getting a couple of moments.
Probably not for this one.
Yeah, probably not going to work for this one. But generally speaking, there's some people that are still under the idea that tourniquets are bad, don't use them. And the opposite is completely true. So commit to it early, get it on there. If somebody has a bleed out on the extremities, down on the legs, especially something that's along the thighs, you got the femoral artery, get a tourniquet on there, don't hesitate on that. Get that bleeding stopped as quickly as you possibly can. So this one would be a little bit more pressure down on the side of the neck, but that's where I'm going to leave that and move on to the real topic of this, which is when your heart causes sudden cardiac arrest. When it's not due to trauma, it's not, well, I will say we have two traumatic conditions that come in here. But when it's not going to be a bleeding issue, it's not going to be, liver, spleen lacerations, things like that, the heart is what's really causing the problem today. So let's start taking a look at the prevalence. How often does this really happen? And the answer is not that terribly often. We're not talking about something that you anticipate happening at every sporting event. No, this is something that's going to happen quite rarely. So according to the NCAA, granted their ability to rate college softball teams and rank them might be a little bit questionable, but this does seem to be about the best information we have in terms of the incidence of sudden cardiac arrest during sporting events. It's 1 in every 22,903 athlete participant years. So that means that you have somebody that's participating in sports for 1 full year, or 2 people that do 6 months, thereabouts. That's what that comes down to actually mean. Now, in terms of other factors on it, I would say that just like any kind of research related to this kind of topic, the information out there isn't terribly good. It's a very low reliability, just because trying to get this kind of measurement is really difficult. So if you think about this number is for people between the ages of 15 and 24. Well, how many people out there between the ages of 15 and 24 are playing sports, and the NCAA doesn't know about it? So it's fair to say that, like I said, these questions, or if these numbers there, they're not perfect, but it is about the best that we have right now and does seem to be representative of the population. So 11% of those that end up in sudden cardiac arrest tend to be female. So once again, that might be somewhat factored by participation in sports. 29% African American. We do tend to know that number tends to be elevated compared to other racial groups. Once again, we kind of anticipate that if we take a look at cardiac disease for African American men versus Caucasian men. It tends to have a higher incidence by about 50%. Once again, that's somewhat anticipated, and 82% of it during physical exertion. So it's when their heart rate's actually up and they're active during the sport. So let's start getting into some specific conditions then. So what I want to do is I want to go through some different types of conditions, different ways in which somebody may end up in sudden cardiac arrest. So one of the ones we're going to focus on today is going to be different electrical disturbances that can cause you to just suddenly drop on the field with no warning. So we have a 12-lead EKG up here. Now, who's comfortable actually reading 12-lead EKGs? So we're going to take a moment, we're going to take a good look at this. So if you know EKGs, take a look at the bottom line on this. So on the projector, it's always a little bit difficult to tell exactly where the big bold lines are compared to the small tiny lines. But when we take a look at the basic EKG, this doesn't look bad. Does everything look like it's regular following a metronome? So regularity's there, that's good. And the rate, does it look like everything's really bunched up or really widely spaced, or does it look like it's coming in at a rate of about roughly 80? Doesn't look too bad. So a lot of people, when you take a look at this rhythm, you'd say it's just a normal sinus rhythm. That's exactly what you should be seeing. And that's true. That's exactly what this is. It looks like a very normal EKG until you start digging just a little bit deeper into it. So what I want you to do is I want you to take a look at V2 and V4. V2 through about V4. And you have the QRS complex. So these leads up here. You have a QRS complex. right at the end of that QRS complex, you have what we call the J point. So drew the line right down to the J point. Now if you look at the baseline for it, right before the P waves on this, right before anything starts to happen, that's what we call the isoelectric line. That is the line that says nothing is happening right now. Now where I put that little red line going to the J point, that should be even with the isoelectric line. But you notice that if we take along in V2, V3, and a little bit in V4, it's higher. That's actually a sign of a pretty big problem. How easy is that to find? Now I will say too, that is a sign of a big problem. Most people will also misdiagnose that problem because it looks like something else. It looks like somebody's having a heart attack. Oftentimes we talk about what we call ST elevation, J point elevation, and if somebody has the right symptom set, if they're pale, sweaty, short of breath, and they're showing that on their 12-lead EKG, oftentimes we take that as being diagnosed as somebody that has a clogged artery inside their heart and they're currently killing off some cardiac tissue. That's not what's going on in this patient though. This patient physically looks fine. They don't have any skin color changes, they're not short of breath, they're out there behaving, participating just like anyone would. What we have here is actually an example of a condition called Brugada syndrome. So this is one that's genetic, passed down through families, and oftentimes can't be diagnosed because the first time that you actually figure out they have Brugada syndrome is because they have sudden cardiac arrest. They just simply drop dead right now. And of course at that point being able to assess an EKG isn't going to happen. No, so oftentimes when we end up running into this is that we know that they have previous relatives that have died from this condition. Now this one, it's particularly difficult because it really just simply kills you at some point. It's kind of like every time that you have a heartbeat, you roll the dice. Now the odds are heavily in your favor. Most likely, nothing bad's going to happen with each heartbeat. But should you happen to get that rare instance when you roll the dice and it comes up bad, you just simply drop dead. So usually the presenting rhythm past that, has anyone ever heard of ventricular fibrillation? That's the rhythm that you drop into. You just simply go straight down underneath it and stop responding. So who's heard of news stories where we've had, say, an otherwise healthy high school player that was out on the court and just simply dropped dead for no reason whatsoever, never got hit, never thrown to the ground, just went back, sat down on the bench, all of a sudden they just slide off the bench and they're dead on the ground. Oftentimes we're looking at something that's along these lines, some kind of congenital issue that runs back. Maybe it's a structural type issue, maybe they had a hole in the heart they weren't aware of, maybe they had some kind of electrical disturbances due to the way their electrolytes respond, which is kind of the heart of Brugada syndrome. It's an issue with the chemicals and the lack of a particular chemical that would help prevent such a thing from happening. But that's oftentimes what it was. So like I said, this doesn't happen in every high school basketball game you go to. This is a rare instance, it doesn't happen often. But there's a couple of thousand different ways in which it could happen. Brugada syndrome is just one example of this type of electrical disturbance. It's one of the more common ones and also one of the easier ones to find. And as we just discussed, it's not easy to find. So you really do have to go off and look for it. So for example, how many people do you think hit high school without ever having had a 12-lead EKG done? Basically, if you've ever had a 12-lead EKG by the time that you hit high school, I would be really impressed. You must really know that you have some kind of a cardiac defect for somebody to bother doing that. We don't think about that much with that age group. And it's not part of standard health screening for things like sports either. So it doesn't get done. So that is one example. Now going on from there. There's another one. This one is relatively common. I've seen this one out there a few times. So looking down EKG again, once again, this is one that you might look at and go, well, the rate, the rhythms, everything's looking pretty good with this one. So QRS complexes are where they should be and everything's going nice and regular like a metronome. But there's something that does kind of stand out on this one. So right behind those QRS complexes, we have what are called T waves. And there's something that looks a little bit funny about that T wave. Anyone know what that is? Yeah, it's downwards facing. If your QRS complex is primarily up, your T wave should also be up. They should match. And it's also very wide and late. So that's another one that kind of stands out on this one. Now by itself, that probably doesn't mean anything. In fact, this is relatively common compared to most other cardiac conditions. So this is a condition that we refer to as prolonged QT syndrome. Basically, from when the QRS complex begins and the T wave is, it's long. Taking longer to repolarize the heart than it actually should. Now, by itself, if this is what you have going on, prolonged QT syndrome, once again, you're not showing any symptoms, nothing's going wrong, you're looking fine all the time until something goes wrong. Now, this is another one that in sports tends to have a pretty big effect on you. Once when you actually get up, moving, what happens to your heart rate? Goes on up. What happens if you run your heart rate faster than you can repolarize your heart? Most of us, that wouldn't be an issue. So if you take a look at the sinus node, it does have a max rate. Now it gets a little bit lower as you get older, so if you're young in good shape, say about 20 years old, having a heart rate of 190, that's probably about what your peak heart rate is, right? Sounds about right. We wouldn't expect to see anyone in the sinus rhythm at 220. Sinus node just doesn't go that fast. As you get older, you might be sitting at a max rate of, say, about 170. So 65 years old, you're probably not going to get up to 190 off the sinus node. If you see it that fast, it probably wouldn't be right. So usually you can't get your heart going fast enough to actually run into when your heart's still trying to repolarize. You can't run those two things together unless you take too long to repolarize if you have prolonged QT syndrome. So when I'm taking a look at this kind of a rhythm, I'm starting to think that this is somebody that's going to have some issues if they do get the heart rate pumping. Now, so when you start taking a look at the kind of disturbances we can have as a result of this condition. Now this is probably the first 12 lead that you're looking at and when that's not right. Something about that looks really bad. So this is an EKG from a patient that does have prolonged QT syndrome. And what they're doing is they keep on running their rate into the previous beat. Basically just running too fast, trying to get the heart to go before the heart's ready to go. And it's causing a rhythm, what we call runs of ventricular tachycardia. So some of those beats that look pretty normal, and then all of a sudden we get the peaks and valleys, coming up nice and regular. That's really what the patient's heart is doing. So running at a rate of roughly about 180. And it's all ventricular driven. It's not coming from the sinus node at all, it's actually overdriving that. Sinus node's trying to do its job, but it can't because the ventricles decide they're going to go off and do their own thing. What would happen if this rhythm was actually sustained? They keep on going in and out of it, but what would happen if they went into ventricular tachycardia and stayed there? I will say, based on the presentation, it is the obvious answer. That's a fatal rhythm. So you can tolerate being in ventricular tachycardia for a length of time. Basically, the better shape you're in, the longer you can tolerate being in it. But eventually, it is going to kill you. It will put you into full arrest, and you'll end up with what we call flatline, or the most stable rhythm ever. I know, EMS sense of humor. It takes a little while to get used to it. So this is a patient here that's at a very high risk. Now, what's it going to look like when they're actually showing these runs? Well, think about this for a moment. Have you ever had too much caffeine? Because I'm standing in college, I assume that somebody's got to be saying, yeah, I've had too much caffeine before. You might be caffeinating right now. Absolutely. Once when finals come around, you'll actually see this. We'll see an uptick in these types of calls. But once when you start feeling your heart racing, just thump, 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 uncontrolled, fluttering sensation inside your chest. Well, the heart is physically fluttering and bouncing around inside your chest. Sometimes you actually feel it hitting up against the inside of your chest wall. So they can get that fluttering sensation. If it's something that's kind of like this, you're actually going to be going in and out of that fluttering sensation. And the skin. When that fluttering sensation is something that's really, really bad, the skin is what's going to tell the big story if you ask. Once when they start to turn real pale, really ashen gray, and the next one probably in athletics is probably not the best measure of it, when they're getting really sweaty. I will say that they'd be getting sweaty for no reason whatsoever. You know, they're sitting on the sidelines on a 40-degree day and haven't been in the game for the last 20 minutes, and now they're all of a sudden getting sweaty like they've just been running their butts off. Be a real bad sign on that one. So if you start to see those things on somebody, get that fluttering sensation inside their chest, you might be dealing with this kind of a situation. Like I said, the skin is what's going to say this is getting really, really bad. If you see somebody turn ashen gray for really no reason, that's a horrible sign. You want to start taking a look at things right away. So that's referred to as an R on T. So there's a few different ways that you can get there, and it's actually related to another condition we're going to talk about here in a few different slides. We'll see if you can call it when it comes on up. But when you throw one heartbeat as the heart's trying to repolarize from a previous heartbeat, that's a really good way to mess up your electrical system and start causing malignant rhythms like this. Just as an aside on it, has anyone ever heard of what's called a parasystolic rhythm? I will say I've only encountered this once in my career. But this is when your heart actually runs two simultaneous rhythms. This particular patient was running ventricular tachycardia at the same time she was running a sinus rhythm. And the EKG really does look like it just took two rhythms and he's pushed them together. Your heart can really do some fascinating things when it really gets its mindset on that. But that's actually due to a late repolarization syndrome, very similar to this. It just wasn't activity related on that one. And continuing on down, making your EKGs look worse and worse. So the first one you kind of look at and you go, that's not so bad. Now this one you look at it and you go, that looks like I gave a 3-year-old a crayon and told him to draw a straight line. So getting a little bit more obviously worse. Now this rhythm here, this is another one that oftentimes a lot of people misdiagnose. So this one goes under a French name. Most times in medicine we have Latin names for everything, right? Sometimes a little bit of Greek mixed in. This one actually goes with French. This is another one that can happen in response to an R on T or due to patients with electrolyte imbalances. Oftentimes potassium would be the biggest one on this. Which for just a quick mention on potassium. When you start exercising, what happens to potassium levels? So kind of think about this for a moment. When you go out, you do activity, how much do you damage your muscles? Say that you're going to go run a marathon. You go damage your muscles. I mean, basically, if once again, I'm sure somebody's going to get angry with me for generalizing something out this much, but when you go out and you do some weightlifting exercise, basically you're going to build up your muscles by beating them on them a bit and damaging them a bit. When they rebuild themselves back up from that damage, they come back a little bit stronger. Fair enough generalization? Nobody's going to be too angry at me for that. Well, when you damage muscles, you damage cellular tissue, it's going to release some potassium out into the bloodstream. Now, at the same time, the good news is that every time that you take sugar into your cells, insulin and sugar, that also carries potassium from the bloodstream back into the cells. So when you're exercising, when you're actually burning out sugar and you have that insulin sugar transport going, you actually end up decreasing potassium levels for a little bit as you're exercising. And once when you come to rest, you spike them up nice and high, and eventually they even themselves back out. So if you're prone towards having issues due to low potassium or high potassium, exercise is a nice way of kind of exacerbating that and getting those problems to show. And this is one of the conditions you can end up in as a result of that. Usually during the active exercise phase, when your potassium drops down a little bit, if it gets below about 3.5 milliequivalents, then you'll start showing this if you're prone towards it. And this is called torsade de pointes. Like I said, you gotta go with the French pronunciation of it. Otherwise, you end up saying Tersades di Ponti. That doesn't quite sound as good. So the other name for this is a specific type of what we call a polymorphic ventricular tachycardia. Once again, most of the time that we see a ventricular tachycardia, it's going to have a single site that got really, really ticked off about something, and it starts speaking very loud and very fast. That's usually where most VTACs come from. However, with polymorphic ventricular tachycardias, we have a bunch of very angry sites inside the ventricles that are all going to start trying to speak at once. And in the Torsade de Pointes presentation, it's usually due to potassium imbalance, and it follows a circular pattern throughout the ventricles that tend to trade off exactly where the really pissed off site is going to be. Now, the other complication with this one, ventricular tachycardia, we're going to be, by the way, we will get to treatment of this stuff in a minute. I promise we will get there. When we start talking about the ease of treating most cases of ventricular tachycardia compared to Torsade de Pointes, guess which one is really difficult to treat? This one up here. So this one usually ends up requiring some added electrolytes. You usually got to get a gram or two of make sulfate in them to get this rhythm to go away. It's very malignant. It doesn't like to go away. Most cases of ventricular tachycardia, if you get an AED on them and shock them, that will make most cases go away. But the failure rate on defibrillating this particular rhythm is very high. So that's why I wanted to bring this one up. You know, oftentimes these seems to be treated a little bit more easy, but this one's a little bit more difficult. And when you take a look at the rhythm, what really sets this one apart is the fact that not every one of these peaks looks the same. In fact, what Torsade de Pointes means, does anyone speak French? You do? Do you know what it means in French?
Torsade is like a bombardment or like a lot of multitude kind of thing, and then point is just, you know, peaks.
Yep, literally means points. In fact, that's where that word in English comes from, is from the French word for it. The romantic is for points. So this comes down to literally mean twisting of the points is a translation on that one. So you have one sharp point and one dull point on each one of the peaks and valleys. And this one, you see it flipping top to bottom. And that's where that name comes from, is twisting of the points. And that's what tells you that there's a whole bunch of different places that's getting involved in generating this rhythm. It's not just one place in the ventricles. It's going to be a much more global issue, more like an electrolyte issue. And then we have this one. I figured that we kind of come to one that maybe is just a little bit more comfortable for everyone towards the end of the EKG strips here. Who wants to name this rhythm? What's that?
AFib?
Not AFib. You're close though. VFib. Ventricular fibrillation. So this just basically means chaotic energy in the heart. So has anyone ever seen a flat line on TV? TV show comes on, you just get the... And then of course they take out the paddles with the goo on them, which we haven't used in over 15 years in fact. I've been in the field for 16 years and I have never defibrillated somebody with paddles because we use stickers. They're much safer and much more effective. But of course they got flatline, they put the paddles on them and shout clear. Once again, not exactly the way we do things, but, and then shock them. And they shock flatline. What are they trying to do? Yeah, they're trying to start the heart. One of the secret of defib, it doesn't start the heart. It stops the heart. So what you're doing is you're taking a fatal dose of electricity and you're going to run it right across the heart to make sure the heart stops doing everything it's been doing. So kind of imagine this. You have a room full of people. Say that everyone were to get up right now and just start talking randomly. All that you hear is just, white noise all the way on through. You can't make out a single thing. What happens when somebody gets up on top of the microphone and goes, "Quiet down"? Hopefully now everything just simply stops. That's what a defib does. Just simply says, shut up, stop doing what you're doing, and then hopefully you have a chance to speak then. And that's what a defib does. So this is a rhythm we've kind of mentioned a couple of times now. Let's say RNTs. Some patients with that late repolarization can drop down into this rhythm. and they'll be instantly dead right now. No warning whatsoever. This is what you see on an EKG if you hooked it up to them. Because you would see this chaotic energy. If you were to actually open up their chest, the heart would not be sitting still. It'd be vibrating. Sitting inside their chest, twitching, shaking around, just vibrating around. It's kind of like, you know, what you see inside the rhythm. That's what it looks like the heart is doing. How do you make that stop?
Reset it.
Yeah, you shock it. You give it a fatal dose of electricity, make the heart stop doing everything it's doing, and then we cross our fingers and hope that the sinus node takes over again. That's what you end up doing. So that's what ventricular fibrillation actually looks like. And that's something that's very treatable. Now another way that we can get down to that. So I said that this isn't going to be a very big trauma focus, but sometimes trauma can cause your electrical rhythm to get really far off. And this is actually going to be one of the more frequent ways that can happen. It's a condition called commotio cordis. So I'm going to give our Facebook Live people just a moment. I put the web link up on there for the video that we're about to show. So if you're watching on Facebook, pop over into your browser for a moment and see if you can't get this queued on up. But we're going to take a little look at what happens when you do actually have commotio cordis and what this looks like. So what we have here is a martial arts tournament, and we'll see this happen with just about any kind of contact sport. So usually if it's a contact sport that has a little bit more focal trauma applied to you, it tends to be a little bit more common. So martial arts is good for it. Hockey pucks to the chest, we'll do it. But we'll take a look at what commotio cordis is, and we'll kind of explain how this actually happens. What'd you see?
Punch to the chest.
Yeah, hit to the chest. So, anyone been hit in the chest before and not dropped down? Probably. So this is one of those things. Like I said, a lot of these conditions, you really just have to line things up right. So in this particular case, when he was punched in the chest, he was punched right at the top of the sternum. Right up here. That's the key location. It has to hit the top of the sternum, right on the midline. You can't be off to the side, can't be to the ribs. You got to hit the sternum. And remember how we talked about that T wave, the heart repolarization phase. When your heart is trying to get itself ready to beat again, that's an extremely vulnerable phase for it. That's what we call the relative refractory zone. So if you were to hit the heart at that particular phase, one of three things is going to happen. The best one is nothing. If it wasn't hard enough, now you left electricity to get it to actually respond, and the heart was just simply too early in the repolarization phase to be able to do much of anything for any reason. So that's the best outcome, is when nothing happens. The second best outcome is you force the heart to beat again. You can actually do that where you hit the heart in this relative refractory and it'll actually depolarize and give itself another weak beat. So, not the best thing to do, but also when that's done, it's just going to go through its reset phase and just keep on going like nothing ever happened. Or, of course, there's option number 3, which is you drop the VFib. So, ventricular tachycardia is an option, ventricular fibrillation is a very common option, and that's what happened in this particular case. The patient instantly went down into VFib, because every time that you hit the peak of the sternum, you actually release, depending on the strength of the hit, about 8 to 12 joules through the heart. Every time you hit the peak of the sternum. In fact, we use that as a medical procedure. So if we watch somebody go into VFib, say that I have somebody in the back of the truck, they're sick, and I've been worried about them, and I got everything hooked up to them to monitor their cardiac rhythm, and I'm seeing the rhythm come across, and all of a sudden I see VFib come across the monitor. Guess what I'm going to do? Yeah, I'm going to reach on over it, hit him on the peak of the sternum as hard as I can. They're called a precardial thump. I heard somebody back here say that. So you'll also see this sometimes in the cardiac study labs. Say if somebody's getting an echocardiogram, they got him up on the treadmill, going along, and all of a sudden the cardiologist sees this really ugly rhythm show up on there. They come tearing into that room, pull them down onto the ground, and start beating on their chest. Of course, from the patient's perspective, this is really weird. It's like, well, dude, what did I do to this? But you'll actually see that particular procedure used. So sometimes it can be used to the patient's advantage, but sometimes it really comes out to their disadvantage. And honestly, it doesn't take a whole lot. It doesn't have to be anything that's really spectacular. So if we kind of back up and watch that hit again, it doesn't look like much. And there it was. Now I will say, when it comes down to martial arts, it doesn't look like much, but boy, it's sure a whole lot anytime that you actually feel it. So it is actually a pretty good hit. And one other thing to notice, that he just simply dropped down with the hit. Usually when you go into a ventricular fibrillation, you have about 10 seconds of lucidity. At that point, once when you got hit, that's when he dropped into VFib. But he still stayed lucid long enough to wander back to his line. And that's when he started feeling really woozy up top, lost his balance, blurry vision, down onto the ground, and out. At that point, he no longer would have had any recollection of what's going on. He is now in full cardiac arrest and is medically dead. So that's commotio cordis. So while I said we're not going to really focus too much on trauma, but when trauma actually causes electrical disturbances in the heart, we'll take a look at that. So that's that particular condition. Let's take a look at another condition, another traumatic condition. Yes?
So if that thump put him into it, could the thump take him out of it as well, or no?
Yeah, it's worth a shot. I will say in that case, it's probably not going to be terribly effective, and I will say the failure rate of precardial thumps is very, very high. So if it's not done at the moment they go into cardiac arrest, really if it's been 30 seconds, say that somebody passes out on you and you have to take the time to get the cardiac monitor onto them before you see that they're in VFib, you might as well not do it. But if you get right in there right away, hit it. And that's where I think a little bit of awareness comes in on this one. Just kind of having that suspicion inside your mind might help you out a little bit. It does have a small chance of bringing them back into it, back out of it, I should say. At the same time, too, when you go into VFib because of that particular cause, it tends to be what we call refractory VFib, which doesn't respond to shocks very well either. So it does tend to have a very high death rate associated with it. So another traumatic condition, now referred to as traumatic asphyxia, can happen as a result of this one too. And this one's a little bit less focal and a little bit more general trauma to the chest, and comes from a compressive cause. So let's say that you're out on the American football field, and somebody ends up just being completely creamed down on the ground by somebody that's about twice their size. If I was playing football, this would be more like somebody that's about 4 times your size. I tend to stay pretty close to the ground and probably won't make a very good lineman on this. But let's say that your chest then gets compressed between the other player and the ground. And that's the kind of mechanism that we're going to see this particular case. Now this one, it's not going to cause a lot for electrical disturbances, but if you take a look at this fellow up here in the picture, you can see that compressive trauma marks to his chest, the contusions. What do you notice about his head? Yeah, his whole head is purple. And that is the sign that somebody's just encountered traumatic asphyxia. Once when you have pretty much shoulders on up, just instantly turn a purple color, that's a sign that you're dealing with traumatic asphyxia. Put this mechanism, that sign together, it's a pretty good bet. So what's really happened here? If we take a look inside the heart, take a look at the valves. So what happened was you compressed the heart and you flipped the valves upside down. So instead of the ventricles pumping up through the aortic valve and the pulmonary valve, they just went up through the bicuspid and the tricuspid valve. And the reason that we're getting this coloration on the patient, basically shoulders on up, is that you took the blood that was in the heart and you forced it through the superior vena cava and up into the head. Forces that kind of discoloration. Now this one I will say, if it doesn't kill you right away, which is a pretty good chance. It's only the kind of thing that can kill you right away. The chance of you dying from it, if it's not instantaneous, is actually rather low. But the chance of dying from something else is actually still quite high. You can cause mental status changes, loss of airway control. So guess what kills most people with traumatic asphyxia if they don't die instantly from the trauma? Airway issues. They vomit up into their airway, blocks it on up, they just fail to breathe and asphyxiate. Hence the term traumatic asphyxia. So what's a real big key anytime that you're suspecting this particular condition? Yeah, good airway management, breathing. That's a real key on it. Question?
Would doing CPR make this situation worse?
Not really. I will say that in most cases of traumatic arrest, if trauma was the cause of cardiac arrest, the save rate on that is less than 0.1%. And quite honestly, when I do have a patient that is dead right now, intact airway from a trauma cause, I usually don't even work those. So I usually will just simply document causes, this is the time of death, and leave it be. So in the case that they do die immediately from it, there's probably nothing we can do about it. There's no treatment that will make you come back from that. But if they do survive the initial hit, their chance of survival is actually very good, as long as we manage that airway and manage breathing. So as long as we get on top of those things, it's quite survivable then. And speaking of survival, what is the chance of actually living through something like this? Now, if you had asked me this 15 years ago, I would have said your chance of living, let's not talk about that. That's not something that we like to talk about. Because survival rates from out of hospital cardiac arrest were below 10% for all cases. That wasn't very good. And in fact, for some certain cases, like I said, traumatic arrests, your chance of survival is still extremely low. Some things we just can't fix. But over the past, especially the last 10 years, we've had some massive improvements in the way that we manage these out-of-hospital arrests. So when we take a look at the real big factors on who lives and who doesn't, it's not anything that the ambulance is going to do that really makes a big difference. Guess what really does make a big difference? Yeah, the people that are there right when it happens. And that's a real big message that I think everybody really needs to hear, is that sometimes, you know, you have somebody that comes back from cardiac arrest, they were down for half an hour, and, you know, the ambulance did all this heroic stuff, and the hospital did all this heroic stuff, and woohoo, healthcare providers, and everything they do. Well, you know what? It's not me that ever gets anyone back. It's what somebody did before I got there that actually gets people back. So we kind of take a look at the stats on that. For every minute that you're in cardiac arrest, survivability goes down 10%. By the time that you've been in cardiac arrest for 5 minutes, you have to 50% survival rate tops. Does anyone know the typical ambulance response time?
12 minutes.
Yeah. So on a good day, about 8 minutes. You're already down to about 20% survival rate if nothing happens before the ambulance gets there. Who wants to go bet their house on that in Vegas on those odds? Probably not me either. I don't think I'm going to take those odds. So if you really want to improve your chances, it's not the ambulance that's going to do it. It's going to be the people that are there right when it happens and the way they respond to it. So that's what's really made a big difference, is the public information campaign and the way that we're trying to get this information out there. So if you take a look at the two pie charts then, if we just simply have all heart rhythms, all cardiac arrests out of hospital, all put together, we have about 11% survival rate. Once we have bystanders that initiated CPR, they saw it happen, these are things that we can recover people from, you see that go up to 33%. Now on the other side of the coin, if you take a look at just those that had no prior care, if we go from 11 to 33% with prior care, what's the save rate on those with no prior care? Somewhere below 11%, right? I mean, it has to balance itself out somehow. Survival rate is dismally low if somebody's not doing anything for the time that patient's waiting to receive care. So really what people do on scene, the bystanders, people that get their CPR training and then make use of it out in the field, those are the ones that save lives. That's where the magic really happens. Everything else past that, if that never happened, it doesn't matter what anyone else does. If they're non-salvageable by the time the ambulance arrives, they're non-salvageable. So, one of the big keys here, we've been talking about some cardiac rhythms, electrical disturbances. How do you fix an electrical disturbance? You shock it. If something's going wrong electrically, run some electricity through it. Make it go away. Like I mentioned before, when we defibrillate someone, we're not trying to start anything. We are trying to stop something. We are going to take the slate, wipe it clean, and hopefully, if the heart is capable of running itself again, hopefully it will do so. That's the whole point of defibrillation. Now, so out throughout there, I know that you have a couple of them just inside the school down here, right down by the gym too, which is a great location to have an AED. They're out there, they're publicly available. Not a bad thing to have at each one of your sporting events. Some of these times we've had people go down during a basketball game, and that, by the way, I do like to pick on basketball for that because that is the sport with the highest incidence of sudden cardiac arrest. So I think that the tendency for people that play it to have more fan syndrome might have a little bit to do with that. When the present that AED makes a real big difference. So that is going to be the device that makes that bad rhythm go away. And that rhythm is killing that patient right now. You want that to go away, and the quicker it goes away, the easier it is to make it go away. So the longer VFib stays, the more difficult it is to get rid of. So how accurate are AEDs at detecting these rhythms? Over 99%. They're extremely accurate. Very, very accurate, with one caveat. You're using it the right way. Don't sit there and shake the cables when it's trying to read something or touching the patient or things like that. When AEDs say don't touch the patient, don't touch the patient, get your hands off them. So kind of think about it this way, those pads are on the patient's skin, right? That's because it's reading electricity out on the skin. If you take your electricity that's on your skin and start conducting it into the patient, guess what the AED reads? Going to read your rhythm, which hopefully looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit fast at this point, but not looking like ventricular fibrillation or ventricular tachycardia. So it identifies those two rhythms. It's going to say charging, low down up with a fatal dose of electricity, and then once we push that button, it's going to push that fatal dose of electricity right through the patient, wipe the slate clean. And really you're looking at one of three outcomes. Either they stay flatline. That does happen. Like I said, it is a fatal dose of electricity. It is a risk that you're taking to pass it on through. You might just simply go flatline, never get a rhythm back. Or you might stay in VFib, goes flatline for a bit and goes right back into the same bad rhythm as before. Or you might actually start going into an organized rhythm. Now, I will say, even if it successfully defibrillates them, what's the patient need immediately after defibrillation? Compressions. Go right back into CPR. If you do successfully convert a heart from a bad rhythm to a good rhythm, it will not actually respond. The muscle won't actually move in response to that rhythm for about 2 minutes. If you don't go right back into compressions immediately after you shock someone, guess what tends to happen 2 minutes later? They dropped right back into VFib again because they had no perfusion. Beautiful looking rhythm, but no perfusion to match for about 2 minutes. So that is one caveat that you always want to keep in mind with an AED. Some people think that you should check for a pulse after you press shock in an AED. Don't bother. Go right back into compressions. Check for a pulse in a couple of minutes. And on that same note, let's talk about CPR just a little bit. So there's a little bit of confusion on this. And once again, the media, the news does have a little bit to do with what kind of spreading these things around. Is that oftentimes they'll talk about how somebody received CPR and then recovered from CPR. Is anyone thinking this is kind of fishy? Because every time I read that, every time I see that, I go, no, they didn't recover from CPR because you don't recover from CPR. That doesn't put electricity through your heart. That doesn't make the rhythm go away. What it does, though, is buy you time. And that's the whole point of doing compressions, that we're trying to buy time. What body organ do we do compressions to try to save? What's the whole reason for doing it? So you see a bunch of people coming up and tapping on their heads, and that's exactly it. The heart can go a couple of hours without perfusion and come back just fine. Think about it with heart transplants. They'll take these things, put them in coolers, and they'll fly them for a couple hours off to a different part of the country, put them back in someone, and the heart's not dead. It actually recovers quite nicely from that. The heart can go some time without having perfusion. One thing that cannot go any length of time without perfusion is your brain. And that's the organ that's really going to end up determining how long you can go without perfusion before you're permanently dead. So the reason we start doing compressions is to increase the intrathoracic pressure. You know, make the chest cavity smaller, pressure inside the chest goes up, squeezes on the aorta, squeezes on the vena cava, squeezes on the heart itself, although the heart itself, you know, is not the biggest factor in all this. The great vessels have a fair bit more to do with it. And when you squeeze those vessels, it forces blood out of the chest cavity and up into the head. Do a good enough job with it. We've actually had people that have started to become a little bit more lucid and grab at things as you're doing compressions on them. You actually get good enough brain perfusion that they actually start reaching up and trying to grab airways out and grab at responders and push you away, if you can get your compressions good enough. So I would say at best you're getting about maybe 25% of the normal perfusion through the brain that you would normally get. It's not as good as being alive. You know, your own body can perfuse itself a lot better than somebody pushing in your chest can. But that buys you time. It keeps the brain viable enough that should we get your heart back up and running, you're not brain dead. Another fact to consider on this one. Sometimes we do get people back. We get them to be alive again. And what's the final outcome? Back to their normal lives, no deficits? That'd be highly favorable, but sometimes we get them back and they've sustained so much brain damage that they're in a permanent vegetative state and they have no quality of life. In which case some people would say that's no better than being dead. CPR has a very positive influence on both of those factors. Makes cardiac arrest much more survivable. We've had people that have been in cardiac arrest for over an hour and a half that have come back with no deficits because of the quality of compressions they got during their cardiac arrest. Makes a huge difference. And of course, who's going to be doing this? The people that are there at the time of the arrest. So just a couple of key points that you want to have in. Now, keep your hands on the bottom third of the sternum, 100 to 120 compressions per minute, so staying alive. Staying alive. That works, or another one bites the dust. Just don't sing that one out loud as you're doing it. Bystanders don't tend to like that. Or my personal favorite is actually Smooth Criminal, because all of our CPR mannequins are called Annie, and that's always asking Annie, are you okay? And the other factor of it, you do have to push hard, you have to push deep, but you also have to come the entire way back up. So when you push down, you squeeze the great vessels and empty them out. You have to allow a negative pressure to develop when you come back up to allow them to re-expand and refill with blood. Otherwise, if they don't have a refill with blood, what are you really pushing? So it's kind of like squeezing an empty balloon. It just doesn't get you much of anything. And like I said before, the AED is truly the high priority. Get that AED on them the second you have it. From 2010 to 2012, the AHA actually recommended 5 minutes of CPR prior to placing the AED. They pretty quickly rolled that back when they found out that that was a really bad plan. So there is still a little bit of push out there. Some people that still think that CPR prior to placement of the AED is the right option. But they've since shown that is really not the case. Get the AED on the second that you have it. That is the high priority. And pulse checks, for the most part, don't do them. If the patient doesn't need CPR, they'll tell you they don't need CPR. If they don't tell you they don't need CPR, they probably need CPR. So don't debate it too long. They need some help. And just very, very quickly on prevention here. So there are some ways that we can go through and figure out who's going to be likely to have these kind of events happen. So I know the writing comes out a little bit small on this, but I think we have a PDF available. So 14 different points that you want to look at. Family history is going to be the biggest factor on this one. Even with patients that do have active Brugada syndrome, sometimes the EKG still doesn't show it. But if we start hearing that, oh yeah, uncle died suddenly when he was 32, my dad died suddenly when he was 37, and we're starting to get this kind of history running on through of sudden cardiac death in the family. We start getting very concerned about that, and we want to run a little bit deeper into it. In terms of going through screening, there is a little bit of push out there that we should be screening all of our athletes at about the high school level with the ECG screening, under the justification that it only costs about $25 to do an EKG, a couple $100 if you want to do an echocardiogram, so they don't push quite so hard on that. But of course you have a little bit of pushback, because once when you take a look at the incidence or the number of people that you will actually have a positive change on as a result of this screening, it typically runs about one positive finding after you spend about $80,000 to $90,000 looking for it. So each screening itself is very cheap, but if you were to implement it as a everybody all the time screening, you'd actually see a very high cost associated with such programs, which is why you don't see it done. Now, at the same time, if you do have somebody on a screening tool, high family history, any kind of findings that give you some kind of concern for them having it, you probably do want to do increased screening to prevent them having an incident like this out on the field. So, I don't know if I left much time for questions, but...
Do we have any questions?
Well, thanks a lot for having me here. It's a pleasure.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for coming. Please sign in before you leave. Reminder, next month, third Thursday again, we're going to be here. The topic is going to be, June is LGBT Pride Month. Did I say that correctly? And the topic is going to be transgender athletes. Is that appropriate? And Dr. Melissa McDonald will be our speaker, so it should be a really interesting topic next month. Thanks for coming. Thanks to James for shooting our video and taking care of us this morning. Have a good day.